The night was cruel on the planet Vel. The sky roared like an angry beast, and purple lightning split the clouds into pieces. Rain poured endlessly, falling in cold, heavy drops that stung like frozen needles. The wind howled through the trees, bending them low as if the whole world was crying. Far from the glowing heart of the village, at the very edge of the swamp, stood a small, crooked house made of moss and stone. Inside lived Ilaran, a Velnari widow. Her scales shimmered dull green in the flickering light of the fire pit. She sat in silence, staring at the flames, watching them rise and fall like her breath. She used to have laughter in this home. Her mate had filled the walls with music and warmth. Her son had chased light bugs through the night air. But that was before the war, before the sky burned and the soldiers took everything she loved. Now, only her memories lived with her quiet ghosts that never left. Ilaran had learned to live with loneliness. She spoke to no one, ate simple food, and waited for the days to pass. Her people rarely visited her now. To them, she was a shadow of what once was. But that night, something broke the rhythm of her sorrow. Through the storm's noise, she heard a sound that didn't belong. It was small, faint, almost lost in the wind, a cry. She frowned and stood up. Her long fingers tightened around the handle of her lantern. The sound came again, weak and trembling. It wasn't the cry of an animal. It was higher, softer, a child's cry. Against all reason, Ilaran pushed open her door and stepped into the storm. The wind slapped her face, the rain soaking her cloak instantly, but she followed the sound through the swamp. The mud sucked at her feet, and the water came up to her knees. But she didn't stop. Lightning flashed, showing glimpses of the world-twisted trees, broken reeds, a pool of dark water, and then, in one quick blink of light, she saw it, a small figure lying half buried in the mud. Ilaran's heart skipped a beat. She rushed forward, her claws digging into the wet earth. When she reached the body, she froze in disbelief. It was not a Veln. It was a small, pale-skinned creature, soft, fragile, with short hair clinging to his face. He was trembling, barely breathing. She had seen humans before, from a distance. Traders, soldiers, explorers. They called themselves the Children of Earth. Most Velnari avoided them. They were loud, clumsy, and often brought conflict wherever they went. But this one was no soldier. It was just a child, soaked to the bone and alone in the storm. Ilaran stared at him, unsure what to do. Her mind told her to leave him. The human colonies were far away, and helping him could bring trouble. If her people found out, they might accuse her of betraying her kind. But her heart, cold and quiet for so long, began to ache again. The child made a weak sound, like a small bird calling for its mother. Ilaran's chest tightened. Without thinking further, she reached down, wrapped him in her cloak, and lifted him into her arms. He was light to lightened, burning with fever. His skin was hot and his breathing uneven. She hurried back through the swamp, clutching him close as if he were the last fragile flame in a world full of wind. When she finally reached her home, she laid him beside the fire and wrapped him in her thick moss blankets. She poured water over his lips, whispered soft Velnari words meant to calm frightened souls, and watched as his chest began to rise and fall a little stronger. He stirred. His eyes opened slowly blue, like shards of the sky. He looked at her with confusion and fear. For a moment, she thought he would scream. But instead, his lips moved, and a single word came out, weak but clear. Mum. The sound struck her like a blade and a blessing at once. That word so small, yet filled with every memory she had buried goad through her heart. She froze, staring at him. He reached out with his tiny hand and touched her fingers. His skin was warm, trembling, but his grip was strong. He didn't see an alien monster. He saw safety. He saw hope. Ilaran closed her eyes, and for the first time in many seasons, tears fell from them slow. Silent drops that mixed with the rain still clinging to her face. That night, as the storm raged outside, she sat beside the human child, guarding his sleep. She didn't know who he was, or where he came from, or what dangers his presence would bring. But one thing she knew, for certain. Fate had sent him to her door for a reason, and though she didn't understand it yet, that small act of kindness, the choice to save a stranger, would change her life forever. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean by rain. The swamp glistened under the pale morning light, and the air smelled of wet earth and fresh moss. Inside her small home, Ilaran sat quietly beside the fire, watching over the human child who still slept. His breathing was calm now. His skin, once cold as stone, had gained back some warmth. His tiny chest rose and fell softly beneath the moss blankets. His hair was still damp, and his small hand rested near his cheek. He looked peaceful, fragile, like something made of light and air. Ilaran tilted her head, studying him closely. His face was strange yet gentle, so smooth, so small. Humans had no scales, no ridges, no protective hide. They were soft creatures, and yet, somehow, they had crossed the stars. She could not understand it. How could something so delicate be strong enough to travel between worlds? The child stirred and made a soft sound, a murmur that pulled her thoughts back to the present. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes as blue as a clear sky. For a moment he looked lost. Then he saw her hand instead of fear. His face softened. He whispered something she couldn't understand, his voice weak and hoarse. The words were foreign, but the tone was clear. It was gratitude. Ella single quote, Ren reached out slowly and placed a hand on his forehead. The child flinched at first, then relaxed when he felt the gentle warmth of her palm. She smiled faintly, though her lips trembled. Rest, she said, softly, in her own language, though she knew he would not understand. You are safe here. For the next few days, Ilaran cared for him like a mother tending a wounded hatchling. She fed him warm root broth drop by drop, helped him sit when he was too weak, and changed the moss bedding each time the fever broke. When he was awake, he looked around the room with wide eyes, full of wonder. He pointed at things: her cooking pots, her lanterns, the carved shells on her shelves, and laughed in delight. When she made little hissing sounds to name them, he tried to copy her words, though his tongue stumbled over the strange sounds. Ilaran found herself laughing softly for the first time in years. It felt strange, almost unnatural, yet deeply warm. She learned his name from a small tag sewn into his torn shirt. Lie. The letters were unfamiliar to her people, but she whispered them carefully. Ely, she repeated, her voice quiet, gentle. The child smiled as if hearing his name brought him home again. As the days turned into a week, the house began to feel different. It was no longer silent. Laughter replaced the echo of loneliness. Eli followed Ilaran wherever she went, when she gathered herbs near the stream, when she fed her bright swamp birds, and even when she repaired the cracks in the roof. He was curious about everything. When he saw her long tail sweep across the floor, He tried to hold it, giggling like it was the funniest thing in the world. When she caught fish from the shallow pools, he clapped his hands in excitement, and she began to change too. She found herself humming while cooking, something she hadn't done since her mate had died. She cleaned the dusty corners of her home, planted small flowers near her window, and spoke softly to Eli as if he could understand every word. One afternoon, while Ilaran was preparing food, Eli walked up to her holding something small in his hand. It was a bunch of tiny swamp flowers, purple, glowing faintly under the sunlight. He held them up to her with a shy smile. "For you," he said in his broken accent. Ilaran froze. The flowers trembled in his small hand. Her throat tightened and she took them carefully, afraid they might crumble under her touch. "For me?" she whispered. Eli nodded eagerly. "You look sad sometimes." Those simple words pierced through the shell around her heart. She hadn't realized how empty she had become until this small, human child brought life back into her days. That night, as she tucked Eli into his bedding, she whispered something she had once said long ago to her own son. "Sleep well, my little light." The words felt strange on her tongue, but they also felt right when she sat by the fire after he had fallen asleep. She watched the flames dance and thought about fate. Perhaps the universe had not forgotten her after all. Perhaps, in its strange way, it had sent this fragile child to her not just to be saved, but to save her. Outside, the stars shimmered across the velvet sky. Inside, by the fire, two different souls, one alien. One human slept under the same roof, and for the first time in many years, Ilaran did not feel alone. Weeks passed, and the cold season slowly gave way to gentle warmth. The swamp began to bloom again, painting the air with glowing pollen and sweet mist. Inside her small moss-covered home, Ilaran felt something she hadn't felt in years' life. The human child, Eli, had fully recovered. His cheeks now had color, and his laughter often filled the quiet corners of the house. He was small, curious, and endlessly brave. Everything around him seemed to amaze him: the firelight, the worms, even the soft croaking songs of the swamp frogs. Ilaran often found herself smiling at his wonder. It was strange. Her heart, once heavy and still, now beat with warmth again. Communication between them was not easy. They came from different worlds, spoke different tongues, and shared no common words. But they had found something better than language understanding. When Eli was hungry, he would pat his stomach and look up at her with wide eyes. When he was sleepy, he would yawn loudly and curl up on his blanket without saying a word. When he was happy, he would laugh, and Ilaran would feel that sound echo through her soul like sunlight after rain. Bit by bit, she began teaching him simple Valneri words, soft sounds that shaped meaning through breath and rhythm. And Eli, with his quick human mind, tried to repeat them, often saying them wrong but never giving up. "Sure, la, Ra," he would say, pointing to the small lamp near the window. Ilaran would chuckle, shaking her head gently. "Shalra," she corrected him, clicking her mandibles softly. Eli's face would light up. "Shalra," he'd shout proudly. Sometimes she taught him words, not with sound, but with gestures. A gentle touch on the chest for heart, a hand over the fire for warmth, a palm on the head for peace. And in return, Eli taught her small human words: water, sleep, friend. When he said friend, he pointed at her. Ilaran paused, unsure how to respond. No one had called her that in many years. She touched her chest, her voice low and trembling. "Friend," she repeated, tasting the human word on her tongue. Eli smiled. "Yes, friend." That moment stayed with her like a light deep in her heart. But outside their small world, whispers had begun to spread. The nearby villagers had seen the strange child. They spoke in low, fearful tones. "She shelters one of the off-worlders," they murmured. "Humans are trouble. They bring war. She has lost her mind in her grief." Ilarin ignored them at first. But sometimes, at the market, she could feel their eyes watching her, cold and judging. It hurt, but when she looked at Eli, that pain faded away. One morning, Eli followed her into the marketplace. He stayed close, hiding slightly behind her robe, his small hand clutching her tail for comfort. The villagers stared openly this time. Some backed away. Others whispered louder. A young Velneri woman hissed softly, "You bring an alien child among us." Ilarin's eyes flashed. "He is under my care," she said firmly. "He is harmless." But the woman scoffed. "Humans are never harmless. Keep him away from our homes." Eli didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. His small fingers tightened around Ilarin's hand, and he looked up at her with frightened eyes. Ilarin lowered herself and whispered softly, "It's all right, little one." Her voice shook, but her expression was calm. "We'll go home." That evening, after they returned, she sat outside her house, staring at the sunset. The sky burned gold and crimson, reflected in the water. Eli came to her side and sat quietly, holding one of the swamp flowers she liked. He placed it in her hand and said, "No, sad." She blinked in surprise. "No, sad," she repeated, her voice breaking into a soft laugh. Eli nodded seriously. "No sad, Mum." The word Mum made her freeze. He had called her that once before, in the storm, but this time, it was clear. It was not confusion. It was love. Ilarin looked at him, her eyes soft and shining. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around him and whispered in a voice full of trembling warmth, "No, sad." That night, as the stars spread across the sky like tiny fires, Ilarin realized something important. The villagers could call her foolish. They could whisper behind her back, but they could never understand what she had nursed, something stronger than fear or loneliness. She had found a reason to live again, and though Eli did not belong to her world, in her heart he was her son. The swamp had grown quiet that morning, the mist curling over the water like soft silver smoke. Ilarin was outside, gathering herbs and roots, while Eli played near the edge of the small pond. The boys' laughter rang like bells through the mist, and for a moment she let herself forget the world outside. But the peace did not last. A low hum grew in the sky, strange and mechanical. Ilarin froze, her ears twitching. The hum grew louder, then sharper, until it became a roaring chorus that made the water ripple and the trees shake. Eli stopped his play and looked up, eyes wide with fear. Above them, metallic ships gleamed under the morning sun. They were sleek and silver, with long wings and glowing eyes scanning the swamp. Humans, soldiers. Ilarin's heart sank. She had hoped no one would come searching for the boy. Humans rarely visited Velneri lands, and when they did, it was not to play. The soldiers landed near the edge of the swamp, engines hissing and glowing lights sweeping over the reeds and water. The villagers began to appear, cautiously at first, peeking from behind trees and houses. Whispers spread quickly. "She has a human child," one said, fear in her voice. She hides him. They will destroy everything, another warned. Give him to them before it's too late. Ilaran looked down at Eli. The boy was trembling, his small hands clutching the hem of her robe. He didn't understand what was happening, but he felt the tension, the fear in the air. "They're not here to save him," Ilaran whispered, her voice low and hard. "They are soldiers." The elder of the village approached, his expression grim. "Ilaran," he hissed, "give him to them. If you do not, they will burn our homes and take everything we have." Ilaran's claws tightened into fists. Her chest burned with a mixture of fear, anger, and protectiveness. She had spent years hiding from the world, grieving in silence, and now they demanded that she give away the only life she had chosen to protect. "No," she said quietly but firmly. "I will not give him to anyone. He is under my care." The elder's eyes narrowed. "Then you bring their wrath upon all of us." Ilaran looked down at Eli, who had begun to whimper, sensing danger he could not name. She crouched, brushing his wet hair from his forehead. His face was small, pale, and frightened. Yet there was trust in his eyes, a trust that crushed her heart with both pain and love. "We must leave," she whispered. "Come, little one. We cannot stay here." Eli nodded. He didn't question her. He didn't ask why. He simply took her hand and followed her lead. Ilaran packed quickly, wrapping the boy in his cloak and securing some food. Every movement was careful, precise. She knew the swamp better than anyone, but the soldiers had machines, and machines rarely slept. When they stepped outside, the first soldier called to them, "Stop, give us the child." Ilaran didn't respond. She pulled Eli close, keeping him low as she ducked behind reeds and low trees. The metallic ships hummed above, lights cutting through the mist like knives. They ran through the swamp, water and mud soaking them to the bone. Ilaran felt her muscles burn, lungs ache, but she did not slow. Eli's small hand clutched hers, trusting her completely. That trust was both a blessing and a weight she carried heavily in her chest. The soldiers' shouts echoed across the swamp. Machines moved closer, searching for them. Ilaran glanced back and saw lights dancing on the water searchlights, scanning for movement. One beam found them. Eli screamed, and Ilaran threw herself over him, shielding him with her body. "Step away from the child." A soldier barked. Eli's tiny arms wrapped around her neck, tears streaking his face. "No, don't let them take me," he cried. Ilaran's chest ached with pain she hadn't felt in years. She pressed herself over him, breathing in his warmth, feeling the life she had fought so hard to protect. In that moment, she realized something profound. This small human child, so fragile, so different, had awakened her heart. He was not just a child she protected. He was a spark of hope, a reason to fight, a light in her shadowed world. She would not let the soldiers take him. Not now, not ever. The swamp had never seemed so dark. Ilan moved silently through the dense reeds, her claws sinking into the wet mud with every step. Eli clung to her hand, small and frightened, yet determined to follow. Each of his tiny footsteps sank into the soft ground, making quiet, squelching sounds that could betray them to the soldiers above. The hum of the metallic ships grew louder again. Searchlights cut through the mist, swinging back and forth like hungry eyes. The soldiers shouted commands, their voices amplified by strange devices that carried through the swamp like thunder. Ilaran's chest tightened with every word. She had survived many dangers in her life, But protecting Eli against these machines was something she could not do alone. "Stay close, little one," she whispered. Eli nodded, holding her tail for balance as she navigated through the twisted roots and hidden pools. The swamp was unforgiving. Mud sucked at their feet, reeds scraped across their faces, and hidden waterholes threatened to pull them under. But Ilarain knew every path, every hidden trail that the human soldiers could not see. She led Eli through secret routes, over fallen logs and under tangled vines, their movements quick and silent. Suddenly, a bright beam of light swept across them. Ilarain froze, pressing Eli against her chest. His small body trembled, and his frightened eyes looked up at her. She whispered in a low, steady voice, "Do not scream. We must be shadows. Shadows do not fall." Eli nodded, his small hand clutching hers tightly. Ilarain could feel the rhythm of his fear through their linked fingers. Her heart ached, but it also burned with fierce determination. She would not let them take him. The soldiers were closing in. She could hear the echo of their boots through the marsh and the mechanical whine of their machines scanning for movement. One misstep could mean capture. One slip could destroy everything. They reached a narrow passage between two pools of water. Ilarain paused, listening. The soldiers' voices were just beyond the trees, confused by the winding trails she had chosen. She guided Eli carefully along the path, whispering encouragements as if her words could protect him. "You are brave, little one." "Keep going," she said softly. Eli swallowed hard but nodded. "I'm brave," he whispered, trying to sound confident. Lightning split the sky above, momentarily illuminating the dark swamp. Ilarain's green eyes reflected in the flash as she led him through the mist. Every sense was alert, every muscle strained. Their escape depended on her, and she could not fail. Then a branch snapped under her foot. The soldiers' lights immediately swung in their direction. Ilarain pressed Eli close, covering him with her body. A soldier shouted, "There, move." The searchlights passed over them, and for a terrifying moment it seemed they had been seen. But Ilarain's knowledge of the swamp saved them. She ducked under a fallen log, dragging Eli with her into a hidden depression beneath the roots. They lay there, breathing heavily, listening to the soldiers' frustrated shouts above. Eli's small hand gripped hers. "Will they catch us?" he asked, voice trembling. Ilarain shook her head, trying to hide her own fear. "No, not if we are clever. Not if we trust the swamp." Hours passed, though it felt like days. The soldiers' search grew more desperate, their movements noisy and clumsy in comparison to Ilarain's silent stealth. She led Eli through hidden streams, over slippery logs, and beneath thick branches. Every step, every careful motion was an act of protection, a promise that she would not let harm touch him. Finally, they reached a small clearing where the moonlight reflected on a quiet pool. Ilarain stopped, letting Eli catch his breath. She looked down at him, his small chest heaving with exhaustion, tears streaking his mud-smeared face. "You are safe, little one," she whispered, brushing a wet lock of hair from his face. "We will rest for a moment, then continue. They will not find us here." Eli smiled faintly, his fear giving way to trust. "I knew you would save me," he murmured. Ilarain's heart tightened. He did not know the full weight of her promise, nor the dangers still ahead. But in his small words, she felt the truth of what she had done, not just for him, but for herself. This small human child, so fragile, had become her reason to fight, her purpose. and she would carry him through the darkness, through the marsh, and beyond. The hunt was not over. The danger still surrounded them. But together, Ilaran and Eli were unstoppable, two souls bound by trust, courage, and the fierce will to survive. And for the first time in many years, Ilaran felt hope. The swamp was dark again, the night wrapping the reeds and water in thick shadows. Ilaran and Eli had hidden in a shallow cave beneath twisted roots, their bodies pressed close together. The boy was trembling, exhausted from running, but still clinging to her hand as if it were a lifeline. Above them, the hum of the human ships continued, closer now. Ilaran could hear the voices of the soldiers, their commands sharp and urgent. They were searching, scanning every inch of the swamp. The metallic glow reflected faintly on the water, sending eerie shadows across the walls of the cave. Ilaran's heart pounded. She had led Eli through the swamp with every ounce of strength she had, but she knew the humans would not stop. Their machines could cover ground faster than she could. Their weapons could strike from a distance. Soon, the forest would be filled with light and danger. She looked at Eli. His small face was pale, eyes wide, but still trusting. He had no idea what was coming. He didn't understand that their lives were balanced on the edge of a blade, that one wrong step could mean capture or worse. "They will find us," Ilaran whispered, more to herself than to him. Her claws pressed into the earth beneath her. "And if they do, we cannot fight them together." Eli's small fingers tightened around hers. "I don't want to go," he said softly, voice trembling. "I want to stay with you." Ilaran felt a sharp ache in her chest. She had protected him through storms, through darkness, and through fear. But now she faced the impossible. Keeping him meant risking both their lives. Letting him go might save him. Her mind raced. She thought of the humans she had seen before, traders, soldiers, peacekeepers. Some were harsh, yes, but others cared for their own. Perhaps they would take Eli and give him safety. Perhaps they would care for him better than she could in a swamp filled with dangers and isolation. She knelt, her green eyes meeting his. "Eli, you must listen to me," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I cannot fight them forever. They are too strong. If they catch us, we may both be hurt." Eli's lower lip trembled. "But I don't want to leave you." Ilaran swallowed hard. Her chest ached, but she held him closer. "I know, and I would never let anyone hurt you. But sometimes, to protect someone, we must make a choice we do not want to make. Sometimes, love means letting go." Eli's eyes filled with tears. I promise I'll remember you," he whispered. Her heart broke at his words. She brushed her hand over his wet hair and whispered, "Promise me you will be brave. Promise me you will live." He nodded, gripping her tightly. "I promise." Ilaran rose slowly, holding him close. The sounds of the searchers grew louder. She knew she had only moments to act. She carried him to the edge of the cave, where the moonlight spilled faintly on the ground. A human soldier emerged from the shadows, the glow of his armor reflecting the moonlight. His weapon was lowered, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He studied Ilaran carefully. "Step away from the child," he said softly, but there was no anger in his voice now, only caution. Ilaran looked down at Eli. "Go," she whispered. "I will not let them hurt you." Eli's small arms clung to her neck one last time. "I love you," he said, voice choked. "I love you too, little one," Ilaran whispered, tears running down her cheeks. Now go, live, remember me." The soldier stepped forward. "He's safe with us," he said calmly. "You've done your part." Eli released her, and Eleran watched as he was led toward the waiting ship. She wanted to call him back, to hold him forever, but she stayed still. She had made the hardest choice of her life. She had let him go so he could live. The ship rose, carrying Eli away into the night sky. Ilaran knelt in the mud, exhausted, heartbroken, yet strangely full. She had protected him, and now she had trusted that someone else could keep him safe, for the first time in years. Ilaran understood the true weight of love. It was not just holding close, was knowing when to let go. And in that choice, she had found strength she did not know she still possessed. The night returned to silence, the stars glimmering above. Ilaran sat in the swamp, alone again, yet not defeated. She had given life another chance, and one day, she hoped that small human child would return to her, stronger than ever.